there will be no intro video today. We're on short time. And what you might notice, however, first of all, good afternoon to everyone except the West Coast, because it's still morning there. Good morning to everyone on the West Coast. You might notice impeccable, sharp, beautiful lighting, a camera that has proper contrast, and that also follows me around. If I move my... Oh, geez, you saw my fossil collection. Get this out of here. Check that out. See, I moved all the fossils way over to the side. It's very cool that the camera follows me, but I don't like it. So, Eric Hunley, when you see this video, tell me how I disable the auto track feature on this camera, because I don't like it, but I like the camera itself. Okay. I have a intro guest. I was going to start at 2 o'clock and start with Robert Gouveia. We're going to talk about the January 6th, the latest in all those trials, and we're going to talk about it anyhow. But we're starting early today, or I guess we're starting on time, just 20 minutes early before Gouveia comes on to talk about Canada. I've had the Democracy Fund on. It's at least twice, if it's not 3 times now. They are a firm, or they are an entity in Canada that are taking up a lot of these constitutional COVID cases, much like Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, much like Keith Wilson. And they're dealing with some amazing stuff now, one of which is the arrest of the pastor, Derek Reimer, the guy who was arrested for protesting I think it was not a drag show. Sorry. It was a drag book reading thing. I'm pretty sure it was. So, I'm hiding. I hide nothing. I mean, I can show you what I'm hiding. Oh, now it doesn't seem to be tracking me. Whatever. But I tell you what, I like this camera. Just wanted to stop moving because, yeah. All right, I'm going to bring on our first guest, Alan Honor, a lawyer at the Democracy Fund. We're going to talk Canada madness, and then we're getting into the U.S. madness when Robert Gouveia comes on, who you might know from Watching the Watchers. Alan, sir, how goes the battle?
Hi, Viva. Thanks for having me on.
It's my pleasure. I don't know how many times someone from TDF has been on, but it's been a few now. But there's been some good stuff happening in Canada. First of all, just tell everyone you're a lawyer. You look very young, but you look young enough to be a lawyer. You're a practicing attorney?
That's right. I'm a lawyer at the Democracy Fund. I'm actually their litigation director. We are a civil liberties group. We're a charity. We're located in Toronto. And like you said, we do a lot of the same type of work that groups like the JCCF do and work that someone like Keith Wilson would do.
Fantastic. Now, so you're dealing with a couple of big ones now. And if I'm not mistaken, or at least in my humble opinion, the biggest is, you're dealing with a bunch of COVID tickets. And I say COVID tickets not to downplay the severity of what it means for people to get these tickets, but you're dealing with a number of those contesting those tickets issued under the health orders. You were involved in the commission, the Rouleau Commission, which ended wonderfully. And you're involved also with Derek Reimer, the pastor who was arrested in Alberta?
That's right. Those are some of our cases. So Derek Reimer is sort of an interesting case, if you've been following that one, Viva. This was a pastor out in Calgary, and he went to protest I guess it was called a drag queen story hour. He didn't feel that it was right, I suppose, that parents brought their children to this to the library to have their children read to by drag queens. Whatever the case is about that, he went there, he protested, and I think that probably, it might have made sense that he could have been kicked out of there, but they went much further than that. They criminally charged him with causing a disturbance. They charged him with mischief. I think that was a bit of overreach, right? And so we are involved in this case with funding his defense because, Viva, I don't know if you would agree with me, but one of my favorite politicians once said that freedom is indivisible. And so, if somebody is being criminally charged simply for expressing something, then that's something that could happen to all of us down the road.
Well, especially for the disturbance that he's alleged to have caused. I mean, the video's out there on Twitter. He was shouting or speaking of a loud voice, and then he was, I think, physically lifted up and pushed out of the room. I'm going to ask the obvious question, because we saw what happened to others who were charged with mischief. They were detained for, in Tamara Leach's case, weeks on end. In Pat King's case, months on end. Chris Barber, I think, also months, if not weeks. When he was arrested, was he detained for any extended period of time, or was he in and out the same day, as should be the case for all mischief charges?
Right. So, I should clarify, Viva. So I'm not counsel of record, and that gives me a little bit of latitude. I can speak about it a bit more freely because I'm not privy to all the solicitor-client confidentiality that's happening in this case. He was detained for bail, though. He had a bail hearing. He was released, but the conditions were very strict. They were almost impossible to comply with. And I don't remember the wording of the conditions exactly, but the bail conditions prohibited him essentially from having any contact whatsoever with anyone from the LGBTQ community. And how can anyone comply with a condition like that? How would you even know if you're breaking a condition like that? You couldn't leave your house.
Well, right? Alan, I'll answer it cynically as the man who has taken a black pill suppository these days. The conditions are intended to be the predicate for future criminal accusations of breach of terms, like they did with Tamara Leach. The process is the punishment, but also if they don't get you on the substance, they'll get you on the procedure. So issue some terms of conditions of release that are opaque, ambiguous, or unreasonable. And when you breach them, get you on that, even if the ultimate underlying charge is dismissed or whatever.
Well, it's quite a theory, Viva, but you're right in a way, because if you breach a bail condition, that can be charged as a separate offense. And even if you're found innocent, or you're acquitted, or the charges are stayed on the original offense, you can still be convicted of the failure to comply.
Right. And breach of terms in Canada, I'm fairly certain, can lead to confiscation of even lawfully procured firearms. I'm not sure as to what breach of what terms, but it can cause a world of pain. And I think that's the intention. Now, but hold on. When you say you're not the attorney of record, is the Democracy Fund representing Reimer?
Right. So what we do, Viva, sometimes what we'll do is we'll defend people directly. We'll be counsel of record on a court application or something like that. And other times when the matter is a little bit outside of our jurisdiction, or we have to act very quickly, we will retain a lawyer that we know and we trust, and who is just top notch, and we'll fund that lawyer to defend whoever it is. In this case, it's Derek Reimer, and he's being represented by a lawyer out in Calgary.
Fantastic. It's so preposterous, because even if, let's just hypothesis, even if Reimer made a scene, these are not things which in any realm of a sane universe should be prosecuted, unless the purpose of the prosecution is to make a political point. This type of behavior will not be tolerated. Now, sometimes that's a legitimate purpose for prosecution, when the mischief itself is actually destructive, actually harmful, or actually leads to real problems other than a 5-second skirmish that goes viral on Twitter, but maybe the going viral was the issue. I know what Keith would say to this, although maybe I won't put words in his mouth. Do you feel that there is an overt weaponization of the prosecutorial process and the whole legal system in Canada, much like we're seeing in the US?
Well, I think if someone believed that the prosecution of Derek Reimer was political, they would at least have a cause for believing that. And Viva, you're probably aware that shortly after Derek was arrested, City Council in Calgary, they passed a bylaw. They passed it very quickly, right? They didn't use they didn't go through the ordinary steps. They didn't send this thing to committee or anything like that. They passed this bylaw, and it was called the Safe and Inclusive Access Bylaw. And I'd like to just tell you something about this bylaw that I haven't told anyone yet, but I think it's very strange.
Hold on. Before you do that, everybody watching, snip and clip this, because not very many people know of this bylaw, which many are saying criminalizes lawful protest. So snip clip so the world knows what's going on in, is it Danielle Smith's Alberta? Is it Danielle Smith?
It's Danielle Smith.
Danielle Smith's Alberta. Sorry to interrupt you. Now tell us, We're going to get to the expedited process after this, but tell us the exclusive.
Well, Viva, this bylaw is supposed to, if you look at the objective of the bylaw, it's most likely to, quote, keep people safe from protests, which will, criticize them based on some ground which is protected under the human rights code, right? Something like race, something like gender, something like sexual orientation. But the question is really, does it do that? And does it perhaps even do the opposite? Now, what I'd like to point out is that this bylaw prohibits something called specified protests within 100 meters of a library or a recreational facility. But what is a specified protest? And if you read the definition of it, and I'm going to paraphrase it a little bit here because I don't want to read it word by word, but it means it means basically an expression of disapproval towards an idea that's related to race or gender expression or so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. So consider this, Viva. What if you and I went 90 meters, if we were 90 meters within the entrance of a library in the city of Calgary, and we had a demonstration, we're protesting anti-racism. We said anti-racism is a bad thing, right? That's prohibited by the bylaw. If you're criticizing racism, you're disapproving an idea that is related to race, right? So this is a strange thing about the bylaw. It's so badly thought out.
I was listening to actually, it was a pastor talking about Bill C-4, and I forget who he was quoting, but he said ambiguity always benefits the evil, because ambiguity, especially when it's not accidental, will always be weaponized by the ill intent or those who have ill intent. And it's funny that you mentioned this prohibiting protests within vicinities of certain areas. Quebec did the exact same thing. Overnight, under the cloak of darkness, under COVID, prohibited protest outside of hospitals, outside of schools, if they related to COVID measures, not for the unionized workers. So democracy dies in darkness, or overnight, or by the legislature. Sorry to cut you off. Please carry on.
No, that's okay. That's a great point. And we've seen this in provinces in BC. We've seen it in Ontario related to other sort of very specified issues, like abortion is one of the issues, right? Where people are not allowed to protest because of certain bubble zones. But the thing that makes this one unique is that, like I say, it captures the opposite of what it's intended to capture, right? It's supposed to, in theory, it's supposed to protect people based on human rights grounds, but it also does the opposite. And you know what that means, Viva? It means that the bylaw is too broad, right? Because whenever you look at one of these bylaws and you're trying to decide whether it can be upheld as a reasonable limit on our freedom of expression, you have to determine the objective of that bylaw. And then you look at the objective and you see how it sort of interacts with the measures taken to achieve that objective, right? And in this case, those measures go too far. They're way beyond the objective. Even if you bought the objective in the first place as a valid objective, right? If the objective is to keep people safe from discriminatory protests, that's not all this bylaw does. It does way more than that. It's not proportional to what it's basically it's not proportional, and I don't think it's constitutional.
Well, sure, and they'll say if it's not, take it to court. You'll be the first person to get charged on it, contested on void for vagueness, like they're suggesting with that Bill C-4, which criminalizes conversion therapy as defined in the law, which is a one-way street of talking someone into heterosexuality, all scary stuff. Maple syrup got it right on. What was I just going to say? Oh, no. Are people feeling that this is actually just an overt disguised attack on religion? Because like talking about the Bill C-4, which criminalizes conversion therapy, really seems to be targeting pastors, priests, the religious. This protest seems to be targeting, if not directly, indirectly, abortion type stuff, drag queen type stuff, which might get the protest of religious-based, pastors, priests, etc., we have a bit of a problem with the spate of arresting pastors and priests in Canada. We've got another bit of a problem of, churches going up in flames. I'm sure it has nothing to do with what many believe to be a war being waged on Christianity in Canada. Do you think this is underlying motive, or is it just a happy coincidence?
Well, we'll have to see how it's enforced, right? Because if you look at the bylaw would also, it would prohibit protests which are critical of religion within 100 meters of a library, for example, right? But if that happens, will it be enforced, right? When churches were being burned down all across this country, not much happened. I think some people were charged, but there wasn't a huge outcry about it, right? There wasn't it doesn't seem like the perpetrators of those crimes were really pursued with all of the police resources that were available, and which are sometimes, it seems might be sort of disproportionately directed towards other causes, which seem a little bit more, politically popular.
Yeah, I know what I think. It doesn't matter though. Some of the tickets, the COVID tickets that you've been dealing with, there's been some good results out of British Columbia.
Yeah, we deal with COVID tickets. We deal with criminal charges. A lot of the criminal charges relating to the convoys. Sometimes those tickets, sometimes they're stayed. Sometimes we negotiate withdrawals. Sometimes we have to go to trial. We have one right now. It'll be really interesting to see what the judge rules. This was a gathering ticket, and it's just such an outrageous set of facts. The police came, they knocked on the door, and when nobody answered it, they just opened the door wide open. Viva, we're trying to argue that this is a breach of your right to, it violates your reasonable expectation of privacy. And, when somebody tried to close the door, the police said, no, you can't do that.
It's outrageous. It's outrageous. And the courts, in my humble opinion, have not been doing the job they were supposed to do, which is uphold the law as opposed to please the politicians. Last question, Alan, and then tell everybody where to find you and where they can support your ventures, because, and not yours, but the Democracy Fund.
Yeah.
Oh no! This is the question. In as much as you can answer it without swearing, your feelings on the conclusion of the commission that exonerated Trudeau, ratified his actions. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, they can't be summed up in just a sentence, and I'm worried about taking time away from your other guests. But I really think it all came down to reasonable grounds, right? And reasonable grounds is such a it's such a flexible standard that you can make it go either way. It can flex in one direction or another, right? And I think in this case, the evidence was so low. But I mean, what are reasonable grounds, right? It's something more that is more than suspicion, but it's less than a balance of probability. That's sort of the area it occupies. And I think when Justice Rouleau, Commissioner Rouleau, said that the evidence wasn't very good, and reasonable people could disagree with his conclusion, I think maybe that's the best we could have hoped for. Maybe we should actually consider this a victory.
Yeah, reasonable people could disagree. Reasonable people could disagree, except no, freezing bank accounts. It was effective. So let's do it again the next time there's a protest outside of a library.
Well, Viva, if somebody wants to read a little bit more about what we think, we had a short reaction piece on our website. They can look at it. It's thedemocracyfund.ca. If they want to donate to help us with our with the type of charitable work we do, they can do that there too.
Thedemocracyfund.ca. I'll put all the links in the pinned comment when we're done, when this gets, when the stream is over and I can put a pinned comment. Alan, let's do this again. Keep us up to date. I not feel obligated. I'm gonna keep the bullhorn on Canada. I did the day before yesterday, or was it yesterday? I forget. It doesn't matter. An entire, a piece on Bill C-4, because there are Canadians who don't know what just happened in Canada within the last year. I do tend to think that mockery and public humiliation are very good deterring factors or good factors for change. So we'll keep it on blast. But Alan, Democracy Fund, thank you for everything you do. Flip me the links in any case, or Jessica will flip me the links and I'll put them up in the pinned comments so people can find you and support your work.
Thanks a lot, Viva.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.
You too.
All right, bye-bye. All right, people. Glowing forehead because I'm glistening with rage. Maybe I do need a powder person maybe one day. I'm not going to powder. All right, now I see Robert in the background, and now that I'm looking at our respective studios, people are going to accuse me of having plagiarized his backdrop. Purple is the color these days, people. I said it as a joke to my wife, and then she ordered this Viva Frei. All right, I'm going to bring Robert on here, and then we're just going to go over to Rumble afterwards. Apparently, the chat is a little wild in Rumble, and we're going to go from Canadian madness to American madness because this is not unique to Canada. The weaponization of the judicial process is not unique to Canada. I don't know if it's trickling down, trickling up, or I don't know if the entire world is rotting from the inside. They say that fish rots from the head, but anybody who's seen a rotten fish, I mean, it rots from everywhere all at once. All right, so I'm going to bring on Robert in 3, 2, 1. Sir.
Viva, what's up?
Dude, it's been a while. Look at this. Look at this. This is beautiful. I think I like your backdrop better than mine.
Yours looks beautiful. Your camera is great. Mine's a little washed out. I switched my input, and so I look a little flat today, but you look fabulous, man. And congratulations on the move. Congratulations on, the coming to the States, to Rumble. It's been a long time, but dude, a lot has happened. So congratulations.
I'm gonna zoom it in so we can do this. You're still sharp and you're looking okay. You're looking good. Okay, now here's what's gonna happen, people. We're gonna go over to Rumble right now, and then after this, we're gonna go to locals for a little bit afterwards. The link to the Rumble is in the pinned comment in the live chat, and then afterwards, everyone's gonna find the links to the Democracy Fund, and we're gonna get into the madness because nobody's been following. There's been a few people following it this closely. Robert has been one of them. So ending on YouTube. Go over to Rumble, and we're going to talk January.